Hello and welcome. This is Hands on Health, the podcast all about living your healthiest life on the coast. I'm Austin Miller.
And I'm Alyssa Evans. Today we're sitting down with Donna Bzdil, the manager of CMH Rehabilitation Services. Thanks for joining us, Donna.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Thanks. We're glad you're here too. To get started today, Donna, would you mind explaining what your job is for people who don't know what occupational therapy is?
So I've been an occupational therapist for about 36 years and worked in a variety of different places. Overall, occupational therapy is an allied health profession. It's a researched profession, and it goes hand in hand with physical therapy. They're two totally different professions, but there's a lot of commonality. We work with people of all ages, from babies all the way up to adults, mature adults. We work with people that have balance issues, visual issues, cognitive issues, sensory issues, muscle coordination, memory, you name it. Anything that decreases your ability to function on a day-to-day. So that means all your daily activities. We look at all of those functional activities, and either sometimes we have to adapt those activities so that they can return to it after an injury or an illness or some kind of trauma, or we do retraining so people can get back to whatever they love to do and need to do.
Let me make sure I got this right. You help people live their life, essentially.
Yep, that's OT.
Wow, that covers a lot of things. What drew you to this field? What made you want to work in occupational therapy?
That's a good question, because when I was in high school, I knew I wanted to be in healthcare, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I ended up my first year. I also love arts, and I was going to be a graphic designer. So my first year, I went to graphic design school because I didn't get into nursing school.
Oh, wow.
It would be a year out before I could get in, which was what my other relatives have been in. I've had a couple relatives in nursing, so that's what I knew about. But a friend of mine went to physical therapy assistant school, PTA, and said, you got to come in and do PTA. Well, she sent me, at that time, you have the books of all the courses and the different professions. She sent that to me, and on the next page was occupational therapy assistant, or CODA. And I just loved it because of the creativity. It's based in a lot of psychological philosophies and understanding people socially. And so a lot of the courses are designed to understand people and what they love to do. I said, yeah, I'll do that. So it was kind of at a whim, but ever since I've been in it, I was an associate. I had my associate degree for 8 years, and then I went back and got my bachelor's degree and have been working ever since.
Wow.
I think that's amazing. That's really neat. And I know on a surface level, it might not seem like there's similarities or parallels between graphic design and OT. But I would say that there probably are, because you're both working with subject matter, creating something, working within a field, and coming up with that ultimate product or ultimate success. So I think that's really neat.
Yeah.
Would you mind kind of explaining a bit more about what occupational therapy is? I know you kind of explained a little bit about the different ways people can benefit from it. Do you mind going into that a little bit more?
Sure. Occupational therapy, basically, the name always gives us a bad rap. People are like, I don't know what that's all about. One of the things that have come up within the profession is to call it what occupies your time. Even though we do work with people in their occupations, so getting people back to work, we also do the whole gamut. So whatever occupies your time. So say you had a stroke and you lost the function of your left arm, you had some visual issues, you would come to occupational therapy. We would do an evaluation to basically look at what are the activities that you're limited in now. So we look at all of those functions that are limiting you from doing those daily activities. So if it was your balance, if it was weakness, we would do a lot of endurance training, but doing it in a functional manner. So maybe we would have you stand at the counter for 2 minutes and build it up and do an activity that would facilitate the movement of your arm or your leg. We would look at the safety of it, working with PT as far as the type of device that might work with them. We would also work with the device, but more, how do you use it when you're walking to the bathroom? How do you use it if you want to take your plate of food to your table or anything that you want to do? So basically, we will also look at those assistive devices and adaptive kind of devices. The whole idea behind occupational therapy is to help people be independent. That's the goal. People don't want to rely on someone else taking care of them, and they want to be able to engage in those activities that are important to them. So a big part of our initial interaction is to find out what is important to them and what do you see yourself doing that you're not doing or that you want to return to. And once we find that out, those are the goals that we work with the patient so that they could have a quality life and enjoy, whatever they're going to do in the future. So it could be adapting their home, could be adapting the way they do things, but it's also retraining them to know how to do things maybe in a different way because of the limitations that they have. And sometimes we can work with them and they can overcome the limitations and move forward and get back to work, taking care of their family, playing softball if they like to play sports, whatever it might be. But those are really, occupational therapy is looking at those activities that are important to somebody and how do we get them to be independent.
I know you mentioned that sometimes people have a stroke, might lose some functionality in their motor capabilities and need occupational therapy. What are some other common ailments or issues that arise that you see that people then need to have occupational therapy?
Any kind of neurological disorder. So multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, stroke, brain injury, all of those affect your neurological system to respond appropriately. And it's not just muscle, and it could be muscles of the eye, it could be muscles of the mouth, it could be any muscle, but it's also the message that's coming from the brain. Is it hindered in any way that's limiting you from moving, from seeing things appropriately, from thinking appropriately? I can give you lots of diagnoses, but as much as the diagnosis is important, to understand the way you handle the recovery, right? So you might handle multiple sclerosis different than sensory integration, but sometimes they have the same issues. So we're looking at what is the deficits that aren't allowing you to engage in a quality life.
That's a lot. I think that's amazing, Donna. It sounds like it could be every aspect of your life. You could go to an occupational therapist and get help.
I believe that. And I love my profession. I have to say that I would have never thought that I would love my career as much as I do. I love helping people, and I love the fact that now I've been in this area for about 22 years, and I had my own business. And when I had that, I worked a lot with kids, and they were 5, 6, and now they're at a high school going to college, and the parents come up and say, "Hey, so-and-so's doing great. I just love you help them so much do this and that." And that in itself is a reward, to know that even down the road, you've made such an impact on somebody's life. I just love that I can do that in my profession. And there are so many different avenues you could go in this career. And that's also fun. And I have done a lot of different things.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I know there are probably at least 100 ways you could answer this question. For one example, what would it look like for a patient to come in to an appointment with an occupational therapist? Say it's maybe their first appointment. however you want to take it, whether it's a child or an adult?
Well, if it's a child or adult, when they come in, you always do an evaluation. So basically that looks at the history as far as medical history, looks at their activity history, looks at things that they've done to help them, whether it's something that's been chronic or acute. If it's an acute, then you're starting at ground zero, really, to help them back to what you need. With the evaluation, we're going to look at their physical strength. We're going to look at balance. We're going to look at, depending on what the issue is, we're going to look at coordination. With kids, we look at where are they on the developmental spectrum there? Are they meeting the demands at that age? We're going to look at sensory components, whether it's adults or kids. After we compile all of that information, there are various tests that we will institute during that time to get kind of the standard or the norms. Like, so your grip strength, is it at your age level for what your grip strength should be, or is it below? Is it above? Your balance, your development. So after we find out the limiting factors, now we know what they want to do and they need to do, then we make goals with the patient. So basically talking to them there, and there's several tests that look at your self-care. Where are you having issues and how important is it? How satisfied are you with it? And once we compile, 4 or 5 different areas that it's very important to them, they're satisfied, they're not satisfied, and they want to improve, then that's how we generate the goals. We look at what they want to improve and what we could improve for them and things that we need to adapt. We have conversations about ways that maybe you can't get back to driving, but what are the options to getting you around in the community? How do we help you with resources or with alternative types of things or adaptive equipment to get your socks and shoes on? So we look at all of those areas, create the plan of care. And when they come in, then usually they'll come in for treatment. It's about an hour treatment, and we'll focus on each of those goals and use a variety of training, education, and tools to be able to help them reach whatever that goal is.
Do you have any advice on how patients can help care for themselves as far as occupational therapy goes? What can people do to help themselves improve in general?
Quality of life means a lot of different things to people. And we all have our own way of approaching tasks and doing tasks. The big thing that we try to engage with folks that have any issues is life balance. That would be the biggest tip, right? Look at what you're involved in. What are the things that really mean a lot to you and you want to keep doing? No matter whether you're struggling with it or maybe you don't have the endurance for it anymore, are those things important enough to put forth that endurance or energy that you want into that task? If it is, great. Then that's something you want to keep in your task. So you're kind of discerning between the things that you want to be able to engage in and the things that aren't so important anymore. So that's a balance. On top of that, if things are not at the level you want it to be, so you're not functioning at the quality you want, you get fatigued when you're out in the garden. It's about looking at how do you protect your joints? Are you wearing the gloves that you need? Are you taking the breaks that you need to be able to do it, but not overburden your system if you have arthritis or you have any kind of back issue, things like that? Are there ways you can change your position frequently? Are there knee pads you can wear on your knees? So things to protect yourself, balance yourself, and really look at the things that you're doing. How strenuous are they on your body? And are there ways you can protect yourself?
That's excellent advice, actually. I can think of a lot of instances in my own life I can apply that.
Yeah, I repositioned how I was sitting while I was listening to that. I was like, I could have better posture.
Yeah. And, it's also about being active. The thing that keeps us going is engaging in the things we like to engage in and doing them often. Make sure that you're out there and you're taking care of yourself nutritionally. All of those things will make a difference, especially as you get older. And you do have problems. We all have problems as we get older. But the more active and the more you take a look at what you're putting in your body absolutely does help.
This is really a bit of a personal note. Reminds me of my great grandmother. She's 92, I think. And she talks about like, oh yeah, I go out and garden still, but I gotta know my limits. And she's taking nutritional shakes and doing all the things to keep going. She had a mild stroke, but got new glasses. Like she's doing a lot of those things that you mentioned that I just can kind of see the parallel. That's pretty awesome. Well, Donna, thank you so much for being on the podcast with us today. We really appreciated having you on, and you've given us a lot of wonderful information.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. This has been an episode of Hands on Health, brought to you by Columbia Memorial Hospital in Astoria, Oregon. CMH is an independent, not-for-profit health system that provides comprehensive, person-centered care in Northwest Oregon.
Find us wherever you listen to podcasts, online at columbiamemorial.org, and on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Thanks again for listening. We hope you'll join us next time for another episode of Hands on Health.